I've been so busy with your sister's party. My mother said when I finally heard from her 2 days after my 30th birthday. You understand how important this is to her. She's been going through so much. I'd stood in my apartment, holding my phone, listening to her explain why my milestone birthday, 30 years on Earth, had been completely forgotten. No call, no text, no acknowledgement that the day I was born 30 years ago had mattered enough to remember. And then 3 weeks later, she'd called asking for money, asking me to help her pay for a surprise weekend getaway. I'd looked at my phone, saw her name, and when I answered, I'd said the words that would change everything. Sorry, who is this? And when she laughed and said, stop joking, it's MOM, I'd replied quietly. I don't have a MOM. She forgot I existed. My name is Victoria Garcia. I'm 32 years old. And the story of my mother's phone call, and my response to it, is also the story of finally setting a boundary that should have been set years ago. The pattern had started long before my 30th birthday. My mother had always favored my younger sister, Emma. This wasn't something I'd imagined or interpreted. It was documented in the choices my mother made consistently throughout our entire lives. When I'd graduated from high school with honors, my mother had said my grades were nice but not surprising. When Emma had graduated with a B average, my mother had thrown a party celebrating her, overcoming challenges. When I'd gotten into a prestigious university, my mother had mentioned it briefly. When Emma had gone to a state school, my mother had hosted a family dinner celebrating the occasion. When I'd started my first professional job as a financial analyst, my mother had asked me to loan her money because she was worried about bills. When Emma had taken a part-time retail job, my mother had bought her a car, a brand new car, to make her commute easier. I'd accepted this over the years. I'd learned to expect less from my mother. I'd stopped mentioning my achievements because I knew the response would be disappointment masked as concern. I'd stopped asking for help because I knew what I'd receive would be criticism about my choices. But I hadn't expected her to forget my birthday entirely. My 30th birthday had felt important to me. 30 is a milestone. It's supposed to mark the transition from young adulthood to genuine adulthood. I'd wanted to mark it somehow. I'd taken the day off work. I'd gone to brunch with a friend. I'd done a few things that made me happy. And I'd waited for my mother to call. She hadn't. By evening, I'd called her. Hey, Mom. Just checking in. She'd been distracted. I could hear noise in the background. Oh, hi, honey. How's your day? It's my birthday, I'd said, hearing the disappointment in my own voice. There had been a pause. Oh my God. Your birthday. I completely forgot. I'm so sorry. I've been coordinating Emma's party. You know she's been going through that breakup, and I just lost track of time. The party was still 2 weeks away. The party, my sister's breakup party, had been more important than my milestone birthday. It's okay, I'd said, because that's what I'd always said. It's okay. Don't worry. I understand. I don't matter as much, but it's okay. We'd hung up. She hadn't called back. Emma's party had been a huge event. My mother had planned it for weeks. Expensive catering, themed decorations, a DJ, a 3-day weekend at a resort that my mother had paid for entirely. I'd been invited. I'd attended. I'd watched my mother fuss over my sister, celebrate her, make her feel like the most important person in the world. And I'd thought about my birthday. The birthday my mother had forgotten. The birthday she'd dismissed because a party for my sister's breakup was more important. 3 weeks after my birthday, my mother had called. Victoria, hi. I need to ask you something. I'd been reading. I'd put my book down. I want to take Emma on a surprise weekend trip. Something really special to help her move past the breakup. It's going to be expensive though, and I'm a little short. Could you lend me $2,000? I'd felt something shift inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder than that. Something more final. Who is this? I'd asked. She'd laughed. Stop joking. It's Mom. I don't have a mom, I'd said quietly. She forgot I existed. The line had gone silent. Victoria, what are you talking about? Of course you have a. You forgot my birthday. Completely. Not even a text. And your excuse was that my sister's party was more important. Then you throw her an expensive celebration, and 3 weeks later you call asking for money for another trip. I'm not angry anymore, Mom. I'm just done. I'd hung up. She'd called back multiple times. I didn't answer. She'd sent text messages. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please call me back. I'd read them without responding. She'd asked my father to intervene. He'd called me, confused and frustrated. "Your mother is very upset. She says you said something harsh. Can you two please just work this out?" "She forgot my birthday, Dad," I'd said simply. "My 30th birthday. And when I told her I was done, she acted like I was overreacting." There had been a long pause. "I didn't know about the birthday." "I know you didn't," I'd said. "Mom didn't tell you because she didn't care enough to remember in the first place." 6 months passed. My mother sent cards. She called on holidays and I didn't answer. She attempted to reframe the situation, telling family members that I was being sensitive and dramatic about a simple mistake. A simple mistake. As if forgetting your daughter's entire existence counted as a simple mistake. I worked with a therapist to process what had happened. She'd helped me understand something important. I'd spent my entire life rearranging myself to fit into the space my mother had allocated. I'd made myself smaller. I'd taken less. I'd accepted dismissal. And when I'd finally set a boundary, a single, simple boundary that said, "I don't accept this anymore," my mother had acted like I was the problem. The boundary wasn't the problem. The boundary was necessary. A year after the phone call, my mother tried a different approach. She sent a letter. "Victoria, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I know I've made mistakes. I know I haven't always been the mother you deserved. I want to try again. Can we please have lunch?" I read the letter 3 times. I noticed what it didn't say. It didn't specifically apologize for forgetting my birthday. It didn't acknowledge the pattern of favoritism. It didn't explain why my sister's party had been more important than my milestone moment. It was a generic apology that could apply to anything, which meant it wasn't really an apology at all. I didn't respond. My sister reached out to me. We'd never been particularly close. It's hard to be close to someone when your mother uses them as a weapon to make you feel small. But Emma seemed genuinely concerned. "Victoria, Mom's been really sad about this. She misses you. Can't you just call her?" "Emma," I'd said, "did you even know about my birthday?" There had been a pause. I think I forgot too. But that was a year ago. You're really holding on to this." "I'm not holding on to anything," I'd said. "I'm protecting myself from people who don't value me. You and Mom can have whatever relationship works for you. But I'm done arranging myself for her convenience." Emma had cried. She'd said I was being cruel. She'd said I was making her feel bad by punishing our mother. I'd realized then that my sister didn't understand. She couldn't understand. She'd never had to make herself small. She'd never had to accept that her existence wasn't important to the person who gave birth to her. 2 years after the phone call, I'd made a major life decision. I'd accepted a job offer in another state. The job was incredible, a role I'd been working toward for my entire career. It came with a significant salary increase, genuine opportunity for advancement, and the chance to build a professional life from scratch in a new city. I'd told my father, "I'm moving in 3 months." He'd asked about my mother's feelings. I'd said I didn't care. When I'd moved, my mother hadn't helped. She hadn't offered support. She hadn't even acknowledged the significance of the move. But Emma had. Emma had actually flown out to help me move into my new place. In doing so, she'd shown me more care than my mother had shown me in years. 3 years after the phone call, I'd gotten engaged. I'd told my father. I'd told Emma. I'd sent a formal announcement to my mother via email. She'd responded immediately. "I want to help with the wedding. I want to be involved." I'd replied, "Thank you for the offer. I've hired a wedding planner. I won't be needing family help." The truth was, I had family help. My father was walking me down the aisle. Emma was a bridesmaid. My future mother-in-law was helping me with details. But my mother? My mother had spent 37 years teaching me that I wasn't important enough to remember. I wasn't going to spend my wedding day pretending that had changed. On my wedding day, my mother sat in the front row. She cried during the ceremony. She smiled for photos. She acted like a proud mother. But I didn't feel anything when I looked at her. No warmth. No connection. No sense of family. What I felt was the absence of what should have been there. The absence of a mother who'd chosen her favorite daughter over her forgotten one. The absence of someone who'd had years to make things right and had instead sent a generic apology letter that acknowledged nothing specific. I was pleasant to her at the reception. I introduced her to my new husband's family. I acted like a dutiful daughter. But inside, I was still the woman who'd answered her mother's phone call and said, "I don't have a mom." And I realized, standing at my own wedding, that those words were true. I didn't have a mom. I had a biological mother. I had a woman who'd given birth to me. I had someone who shared my DNA and showed up to important events. But those things didn't make her my mother. My mother was the woman who celebrated my achievements, who remembered my milestones, who made me feel like my existence mattered. My mother was my therapist, my best friend, my father, my sister, the people who'd shown up for me in the ways she never had. 5 years after the phone call, my mother had gotten sick. The illness was serious. She'd needed help. And my father, my sister, and I had all been there. I'd taken time off work. I'd sat in hospital rooms. I'd helped with her care. But I'd maintained the boundary. I was polite. I was helpful. I was not emotionally connected. My mother had noticed. During one of my visits, when it was just the two of us, she'd asked, "Do you hate me, Victoria?" "No," I'd said honestly. "But I don't have a relationship with you. You're my mother biologically. But you're not my mother in the ways that matter." She'd cried. "I've tried to make it right. You sent a letter that never specifically apologized for anything real," I'd said. "You've never acknowledged the pattern. You've never explained your choices. You've never done the work to actually repair what you broke." "I don't know how to fix this," she'd said. "That's the problem," I'd replied. "You never have." My mother recovered from her illness. I'm grateful for that. I don't want her to die. But I also don't want to pretend that her recovery heals what was broken between us. Some relationships can be repaired. Some can't. Some require a level of accountability and genuine change that a person simply isn't willing to do. My mother couldn't look at her own role in how she'd treated me. She couldn't acknowledge that favoring my sister had real consequences. She couldn't understand that forgetting my 30th birthday wasn't a small mistake. It was a symptom of a much larger pattern of me not mattering enough. And I'd finally learned that I couldn't make her understand. I couldn't make her care. I couldn't rearrange myself enough to make her love me the way she loved my sister. I'm 37 now. I have a husband who calls me on my birthday. I have a sister who remembers my milestones. I have friends who celebrate my achievements. I have a life built around people who value my existence. And I have a mother, a biological connection, a woman who comes to some of my important events, a relationship that exists but isn't warm, isn't close, isn't what I needed it to be. The phone call, when I said I don't have a mom, was the moment I finally told the truth. And I've never taken it back. Not because I'm cruel, but because I'm protective of myself. Because I've learned that love sometimes means saying no. Because I've discovered that setting boundaries isn't punishment, it's self-respect. My mother will probably never fully understand why I maintain this distance. She'll probably always think I'm being dramatic or holding a grudge. But I'm not holding anything. I'm just not carrying her anymore. And that, finally after 37 years, feels like freedom.